Imagine being forced to marry someone you've never seen, not because they live far away, but because they're literally invisible. Welcome to Aminata's life, a village bride chosen to wed an ancient spirit. But here's the twist: she's already in love with someone else. Would you stay loyal to a tradition that could ruin your life, or risk everything for love? Let's dive into the chilling story of the Invisible Bride, where love, fear, and duty collide. In the heart of a small remote village, hidden deep within the forest, there was a tradition that had been upheld for centuries. Every 100 years, a bride had to be chosen to marry the village's guardian spirit, a powerful, invisible being that protected the village from harm. This spirit had kept the village safe from droughts, famines, and invading enemies for as long as anyone could remember. In return, the village offered a bride as a symbol of their loyalty and gratitude. The chosen bride would not live a normal life. She would have to leave her family and live in a special house at the edge of the village, where she would be with the spirit, her invisible husband. No one had ever seen this spirit, but the village elders assured everyone that the tradition must be followed, or the village would be cursed with misfortune. This time, the bride selected was a young woman named Aminata. She was kind, beautiful, and loved by everyone in the village. But Aminata had her own dreams. She was deeply in love with a young farmer named Bubakar, and they had hoped to marry one day and build a life together. When the village elders chose her as the next invisible bride, Aminata's world shattered. She couldn't understand why she had been chosen, but she knew it was an honor and a duty she couldn't refuse. Her parents were proud but heartbroken. Bubachar was devastated. He couldn't believe he was going to lose the woman he loved to a spirit he had never seen. Aminata, however, tried to stay strong. She knew that if she refused, the entire village might suffer. But deep inside, she was terrified and filled with sorrow. The day of the wedding came. The entire village gathered in the square, where the elders performed the traditional ceremony. Aminata stood there in her simple white dress, her face pale with fear and sadness. She felt cold despite the warmth of the sun. No groom stood beside her, but she could feel an eerie presence. The air around her seemed heavy, and a strange wind blew, making the trees sway. After the ceremony, Aminata was taken to the special house at the edge of the village, where she was expected to live as the invisible bride. The house was old but well kept, surrounded by thick trees and away from the village's noise. Inside, everything was quiet, and Aminata felt more alone than ever. She couldn't see her husband, but she knew he was there. She felt his presence, a cold sensation that made her shiver. That night, as Aminata lay on the bed, she couldn't stop thinking about Bubakar. She loved him with all her heart and wanted nothing more than to run to him, but she knew it was impossible. She had made a vow, and the village's safety depended on her staying true to that promise. As she closed her eyes, she felt a soft breeze brush against her cheek, almost like a gentle caress. She knew it was the spirit, but instead of feeling comforted, it made her feel trapped. Days passed, and Aminata tried to adjust to her new life. She kept the house clean, cooked meals, and even talked to the spirit, though it never responded. At times, she could feel it moving around her, like a shadow she couldn't see. But despite the spirit's presence, Aminata felt more alone than ever. Her heart ached for Bubakar, and she knew he was suffering too. One evening, as Aminata was sitting by the window, staring out into the dark forest, she heard a soft knock on the door. Her heart raced as she opened it, and there stood Bubakar. He had come despite knowing the dangers of visiting her. His face was filled with sadness, but also determination. Aminata, he whispered, I can't live without you. I love you, and I don't believe we should let this spirit control our lives. We can run away, leave the village, and be free. We don't have to live like this. Aminata's heart leaped at his words, but she shook her head. Bubakar, I love you too, more than anything. But if I leave, the village will suffer. They say the spirit will bring disaster if I don't stay. I can't put everyone at risk. Bubakar took her hand. What if it's just a story? What if the spirit isn't real? We don't know for sure. All we know is what the elders say, but no one has ever seen this spirit. Aminata looked at him, torn between love and duty. She wanted to believe that Bubakar was right, that the spirit wasn't real, or that it wouldn't harm the village. But she had seen the fear in the elders' eyes. She had felt the cold presence in the house. Something was there, and it was watching her. I can't, Aminata whispered, tears filling her eyes. I can't take that chance. Bubakar sighed and pulled her into his arms. Then I'll stay with you, he said. I'll visit you every night if I have to. I won't let you face this alone. For weeks, Bubakar kept his promise. Every night he would sneak to the house and they would sit together, talking in hushed voices, sharing their hopes and dreams. Aminata felt less alone with Bubakar by her side, but deep down she knew it couldn't last. One night as they were sitting together, a cold wind blew through the house. The temperature dropped sharply, and Aminata felt the presence of the spirit growing stronger. The air became thick with tension, and she knew something was wrong. Suddenly the wind howled, and the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. Aminata and Bubakar stood frozen, fear gripping them. The invisible spirit was angry. It had tolerated Bubakar's visits for too long, and now it was ready to punish them both. A deep, menacing voice filled the room. You have broken the vow, it whispered. You belong to me, Aminata, and you cannot be with another. Aminata clung to Bubakar, trembling. Please, she begged. I never wanted this. I just wanted to protect the village. Don't hurt him. The voice grew colder. If you leave, the village will suffer. But if you stay, I will let him live. Choose, Aminata. Tears streamed down Aminata's face. She knew there was no way out. She couldn't let the village suffer, and she couldn't let Bubakar die. With a heavy heart, she turned to him. You have to go, she whispered. It's the only way. I can't let you die because of me. Bubakar shook his head. I'm not leaving you. But Aminata knew she had to make the choice. Please, she begged. If you love me, you'll leave. You'll live, and I'll know you're safe. That's all I need. Reluctantly, Bubakar nodded, his eyes filled with sorrow. I'll never forget you, he said, his voice breaking. As he walked out the door, the cold wind followed him, and Aminata knew the spirit had let him go. She collapsed to the floor, sobbing. She had lost the man she loved, but she had saved the village. From that day on, Aminata lived alone in the house, the invisible spirit always nearby. The village remained safe, but Aminata's heart was forever broken. She had sacrificed her happiness for the sake of her people, and though they never knew the full story, they would always remember her as the invisible bride who protected them all.